Today we read the Gospel of the fifth Sunday. Fifth Sunday has no reading in the Catamaris because it doesn't come in a regular date. Fifth Sunday means this month has 5 Sundays, an extra weekend. And always, whenever comes a fifth Sunday, we read the Gospel of the 5 loaves and the 2 fish. We read that Gospel, but we read it from 2 different accounts. One from John, and the other one is either from Matthew or Luke. They say the first half of the year you go from John, the second half of the year you go from Luke. So today we read the fifth Sunday because it's the fifth Sunday in the Coptic month, not in February. We're still in the beginning of February. So in this Gospel today we read the first piece. It's about the miracle of the 5 loaves and the 2 fish. And this Gospel account starts with an expectation and it ends with an expectation. There's an expectation at the beginning, and the expectation is tested. I'll explain. Jesus sent his disciple, the background of the story, earlier, when you put the story together from the 4 accounts, he sent his disciples on a missionary trip. He sent the 12. He sent them 2 by 2 to every city and town he was about to go. After they made the tour of Israel, and everybody came back, they're excited to tell him what happened. They wanted to tell him they saw miracles in his name, healing. And the most of all impressive miracle was casting out of demons. And they wanted to tell him about that. So they were around the city called Bethsaida, a city by the Sea of Galilee. And he thought, this is not a good place to have a conversation with my disciples. Our Lord is very thoughtful and very tender. He wanted them to have the chance to talk uninterrupted. Let's go to a remote place where nobody can find us, he said. They go to a little hill by Bethsaida. If you've been to the Holy Land, all of us who went to the Holy Land, you know where this traditionally is. It's a little hill, a little bit further from the sea. And he sat there. But the crowd didn't leave him alone. They knew, they followed him. They wanted to be with him. So he was talking with them and they were talking to him, the disciples. All of a sudden, Jesus, it's in the Gospel of St. John, says, lifted up his eyes. John was very specific about Jesus' movements. He was very much observing every move of the Lord. He didn't want to leave a thing. He said he lifted up his eyes. How many of us will make that in their notes? He lifted up his eyes and saw the crowd coming. He started to feel there's a commotion coming. Then a very interesting question is asked. The Lord focused on Philip and he asked him, where shall we buy bread that these may eat? Apparently in the other Gospels, these people has been following him for 3 days. So whatever food they have is finished. They need to eat. Where shall we buy bread that these may eat, Philip? And I believe that our Lord is picking on Philip. Why out of all the disciples he's picking on Philip? We don't know. And it says that Jesus asked this not because he wanted his advice. He didn't want his advice from Philip. He wanted to test him. Okay, let's see what kind of test is that. And Philip answered and said, 200 denarii worth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may have a little, small piece. They will not even, satisfy their hunger. They might just taste the bread. And we need 200 denarii. Counted this yesterday. A denarii is a day's wage. So you say minimum wages in the States is $7. Let's say 7. So 7 times 8 hours is 56. Say 60. $60. So $60 is a denarii. So what is 200 denarii? $12,000. So he's saying to him, we need $12,000 right now, if you want us to feed this crowd, to feed them a little bit. That's the answer. Philip was quick to calculate, was quick, and apparently Jesus looked at him as a businessman. man who knows the world, a man who knows how to deal with the worldly needs in a worldly way. There's a lad, and then you have some other disciple who was not asked to talk at all. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, it says, is one of the first people to follow Christ, is vouching to speak. He was not asked. And he said, there is a lad here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish. Why is Andrew talking? I asked myself, okay, Jesus is asking Philip, why is he talking out of turn? If you go in the Gospel of St. John and dig a little bit, you would have it in chapter 1. It was Andrew who found Philip and brought him to Jesus. Andrew is his bodyguard, his best friend, the one who would defend him in a hard situation. So he was quick to recognize that Philip is in a bad spot and he needed some help. And he wanted to do anything to take the spotlights off Philip quickly. Because I thought in my mind, oh, we have somebody who really knows what Jesus is going to do. He had felt it, that Jesus is going to do a miracle. He said, there's a lad here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish. But I started to have these hopes when I read the next piece, and he said, but what are they among so many? Oh, whatever hope I had, he dashed it. He doesn't really believe that this is going to be anything. So what are you talking? Why you're talking if you think it's not going to help? And the only explanation in my mind, he's taking the attention from his friend. And St. John recorded all that. So did Philip pass the test or he didn't? Did Philip pass the test? Because it says, Jesus, but this he said to test him, for he himself knew what he would do. He didn't need the advice from Philip. Would Jesus go to a merchant to tell him how we can do business? Would he go to a doctor and see how we can heal a sick person? Would he? Would he go to a psychiatrist and say how we take care of a crazy person? Would Jesus do that? Why would he need to ask Philip? St. John says it's a test. What kind of test is it? What is Jesus testing, really? If I give you a test and there's a student in the school, I want to give them a test, I have to give them a curriculum and an education, something. And then after I finish educating, I test. What is he testing him for? This account happened in the center of the gospel. There's a lot of miracles Jesus did before, a lot of miracles Jesus will do after. What's he testing Philip for? I put it this way. Jesus is telling Philip and the disciples, you've seen me healing sick people. You've seen me casting demons. You've seen me taking off paralysis and blindness. They had not seen him yet raise dead, or maybe they did. Actually, he did. So do you think I can do something more? Or that's all what you know? It's all what you know about me. If I had done nothing of sorts, you would not expect me to do it. So the test is about expectations. What do you expect of me? Jesus asking Philip, what do you expect of me? Can I take care of your hunger? Or you don't believe it? What did Philip say? I don't think of it. It didn't cross my mind. I really don't think you can take care of our hungry people. We need money. That's how I know it. I'm a man, a practical man, who knows reality. Reality says, give me money, I'll take care of business. We don't have money, I don't know what to do. So Jesus does the miracle and impresses them. Now they know that Jesus can actually take care of hunger. At the end of the gospel says, the people around, when they were sitting there and feeding and eating the bread and the loaves, they knew it was a miracle. They knew that. And their expectations got so much more than when they came for Jesus for. They came for healing. Now he's not just healing, but also feeding. They got so excited. What did they want to do? They said, this is truly the prophet that Moses told us about. Let's take him and make him a king. Okay, this is a different expectation. So you go from no expectations to Political expectations. We found solution to all our problems. Let us vote for him. He can solve all our problems. What would Jesus say? Nah. No. I'm not here to fulfill your political ambitions or to correct your systems and to be a king over you. I'm not interested in that. At the end, he's going to tell Pilate, yes, I'm a king, but my kingdom is not of this world. What do we expect of him? What do we really expect of him? Sometimes, and I heard this and it's very beautiful, it says, sometimes in the history of the church in general, the highest aspiration of any person is to be a saint. What's the highest aspiration today? That we want God to help us with it? To be a saint? No, to be successful. To be successful. To graduate from the best university. To have the best job. To have the highest income. To have the best house. To be saints? Should have it on top. Maybe if I do this, God will give me this. We'll throw it in. What is Jesus saying? What's he saying? He's saying your expectations of me, it's either not existent, that I cannot take care of you, or when it exists, actually, you want to turn it into worldly ambition. When you discover that I can do everything, you're going to ask me for what? What are you going to ask me for when you discover that I can do everything to be a king for you in the world? The Bible is filled with these. I'll tell you something, the story of Joseph. We go over it and we just say, Joseph, the righteous young man in Egypt. I like it because there is this, and I want to go back and read it with you, there is this expectation, but Joseph was not deceived. It's in the last few chapters of Joseph's life, maybe in chapter 43. This before it, 40. A little bit more, 39. Yeah. It says that now Joseph, who had a dream from God that he will be a leader, he said in the dream, I saw my brother's sheaves, the stacks of wheat, bowing down to mine. I will be your leader. I'll be a great man. God told me that. You go into chapter 39, and Joseph at the bottom, rock bottom. He says, now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, the officer of Pharaoh, the minister of interior, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him from the Ishmaelites. He was bought with money, a slave. How far can you go? Have you ever thought about you being a slave? And he bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him down. The Lord was with Joseph, and he was a successful man. Excuse me. Have you ever heard about success being a slave? What does that even mean? What does it mean to be a successful slave? Would you consider that success? That it even gets better. When the woman tempted him and she accused him falsely, he goes to prison. And in prison, it said again, the keeper of prison did not look into anything that was under Joseph's authority because the Lord was with him a prisoner. And the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made it prosper. He was a successful prisoner. How would you can think about that? Think about it. By the way, this statement was not said about Joseph when he was the head of Egypt. You will not read it. And the Lord was with Joseph when he was the head of Egypt, dispensing wheat to people. It's not said about him. What does that mean? What today we consider success without God, in the Bible, the definition of it is the greatest failure. 2 Chronicles have a story of a king. It's a very interesting story. In chapter 16, And it tells about this king who's a good one. He is a Christian like you and me. He is like a godly man, but he has a different expectations of God. His name is Asa. In the 36th year of the reign of Asa, Baasha, the king of Israel, he was a king, a vicious king, of his brother, of his sister country, Israel, came up against Judah and built Ramah. He wants to fight him, take over Judah, take the kingdom from him, and kill him, that he might let none go out or come in to Asa, the king of Judah. He wanted to really knock him down. What did Asa do? He is the king who has the temple, who has God. What did he do? He brought silver and gold from the treasuries of the house of the Lord, from the temple, and the king's house, and sent it to Ben-Hadad, king of Syria. So he had his brother, the king of Israel, fighting against him, wants to kill him. He goes to another king to have him help him, who dwelt in Damascus, saying, let there be a treaty between you and me, as there between my father and your father. See, I have sent you silver and gold. Come, break your treaty with Baasha, king of Israel. Don't be his ally, so that he will withdraw from me. He depends on you to fight me. So Ben-Hadad, he heeded King Asa and sent the captains of his armies against the city of Israel. He started fighting the king Baasha, the king of Israel. They attacked Ijon, Dan, Abel-Maim, and they did a wonderful job in conquering Israel and bringing down this threat. Now it happened, when Baasha heard of it, the one who wants to fight him, that he stopped. He succeeded. Stopped building Ramah and ceased his work. The plan that he had to fight Judah did not work. Then King Asa took all Judah, and they carried away the stones. They helped in cleaning whatever he did. Now, the next piece. And at that time, Hanani the seer, that's the prophet. God sent this prophet to talk to Asa. He succeeded. He was successful as a king in knocking down the threat of this enemy. He did what he wanted. It happened. Listen to what happened, and the prophet said what? Because you have relied on the king of Syria, and have not relied on the Lord your God. Therefore, the army of the king of Syria has escaped from your hand. What's he saying? This king that you went and sent the silver and the gold, you solved your problem now. But what would happen in the future? What does it mean that the army escaped? You helped him to survive. You could have fought both of them and won. Were the Ethiopians and the Libyans, that Ethiopia and Libya, not a huge army with very many chariots and horsemen, yet because you relied on the Lord at that time, he delivered them into your hand. For the eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth to show himself strong on behalf of those whose heart is loyal to him. In this you have done foolishly. Therefore, from now on, you shall have wars. What's wrong with it? He tried to get peace by worldly means. He went to people who have power, and he got himself accomplished. He succeeded. But he succeeded without God. And the seer said, it's only temporary. Wait a little bit. Same thing. So Asa got so angry, of course, as usual with the prophet, and put him in prison. That's the reward for the prophet saying the truth. For he was enraged at him because of this. And Asa oppressed some of the people at that time. Note that the acts of Asa, first and last, are indeed written in the book of the kings of Judah and Israel. They're actually in 39th year of his reign, Asa became diseased in his feet, and his malady was severe. Yet, again, in his disease, he did not seek the Lord, but the physicians. Seems like it's an attitude. It continues on. He relies on human wisdom, relies on human sources and power. Philip, where should we get food to feed those? Instead of Philip telling Christ, you, Lord, have the answer to that question, he says, I know how to solve this the regular way, money. I know how to solve this. I know people in power places. I know how to solve this. And by the way, don't feel bad if you're thinking this way. Even the big saints in the Bible had done this. But they were stressed so hard. When Joseph was in the prison for a long time, he found the cupbearer of Pharaoh and said to him, can you please mention me to Pharaoh if you get there? Abraham, God promised him prosperity and he would be the father of many people. When he got older, started to get weak in his faith, what happens? He yielded to Sarah, who thought like the rest of the people, maybe God needs help. Let us get a woman, this girl of mine, and she will carry a child for you. And Ishmael came. What is this to us? Should we not use the world? Should we not use power, money? No, that's not the case. The case is you should first understand what to expect from God and should worry about being a saint, being a holy person, and let God worry about you. Make a deal like Jesus had already did. Make a deal. Lord, I'll take care of my sanctity and the sanctity of my family. I want them to be yours. You, I'll take care of your kingdom. You take care of us. And it never fades. The Bible keeps saying it over and over and over and over again. At the end of the life, and in his life, we're about to go to the cross, Jesus asked the disciples, as long as I was with you, did you need anything? What did they say? No, Lord, we didn't need anything. Of course. Will you need anything? Why do we worry about it? Why we get anxious and get jealous and get fretted when we see somebody have something that we don't have? When we see somebody has more money than we have? When we see someone has a more prestige than we have, a higher degree than we have accomplished something, and we get so angry in our hearts and we say, God's not working with me. I'm not good enough. You want success? God's not going to deny you success. Do you think Joseph at the end of the story was successful? Was he successful? You bet. 100%. He was the king in the whole world. But he never let go of his holiness. When the woman tricked him and wanted to sleep with him, he could have gotten it easy. He said he could have thought about it as many slaves would think, I'll be the boyfriend of the most powerful lady in this house. What would that do to me? Forget about if I like her or I don't like her, but she can be my power in this country, and she would do anything I want. He could have said that. No, he didn't. He didn't. Today, the same temptation is given to us. What do you expect of Christ? Do you expect him to take care of your needs? Act like one. Do you expect him not to take care of your needs? You don't belong to him. You're going to go through hard times? Absolutely. I'm not going to deny that. The Bible is filled with people going through hard times. Joseph, I just spoke about Joseph. I spoke about Jesus and the disciples. But you are more than victorious. More than victorious at the end. If you stand your ground and don't yield to the weakness. And they yield to the voice of the world. Let me say this in Arabic. بالعربي النهارده ربنا في القصة بتاعت الخمس خبزات والسمكتين فيها توقعات من ربنا. التوقع الأولاني هل يقدر ربنا يحول الخمس خبزات والسمكتين يأكل بيهم 5000؟ السؤال ده سأله لمين؟ لفيلبس. قال له يا فيلبس من أين نأتي بخبز يأكل هؤلاء؟ فيلبس كان عنده وقال لك وربنا كان بيمتحنه لأن ربنا نفسه عارف هيعمل إيه. إيه الامتحان؟ الامتحان بدي العيل أو الطالب أو التلميذ منهج وبعدين بمتحنه فيه. طب إيه المنهج؟ أنت شفتني قومت موتى، شفتني خرجت شياطين، شفتني شفيت، ما شفتنيش لسه بعمل إيه؟ بأكل الجعانين. لسه ما حصلتش دي. تتوقعها ولا ما تتوقعهاش؟ فيلبس كان المفروض يقول له إيه؟ يقول له يا رب أنت تقدر تعمل كل حاجة. معاك أنا مش قلقان على حاجة خالص. كان لازم يقول كده. بس لأنه ما شافهاش حصلت لسه وما جربهاش فبيفكر زي أي حد بتاع بيزنس. عايز نجيب بضاعة اديني الفلوس قد كده. عايز تعمل محل قد كده اعمل فلوس قد كده. عايز تعمل بيزنس قد كده يبقى قد كده. الفكر ده بنتدرب عليه في العالم. بنتدرب عليه والعالم كله ماشي بيه. ايه الفرق بيني وبين اي حد تاني في العالم؟ لا في فرق. انتبه. انت بتاعه هو معاك. اللي مش معاه ربنا يفكر بالطريقة دي لكن انت معاك ما ينفعش تفكر كده. حرام. عيب. غلط. هو اللي قال اهتموا الاول بملكوت الله وبره وكل هذه ايه؟ ما فيش حد حرم ربنا من حاجه في نفسه. ما فيش، ما حصلتش. كل اللي في نفسك ربنا يعمله، بس انت اهتم بيه. اهتم ان انت تبقى مقدس وبيتك يبقى مقدس. الباقي ده كله هيديهولك. صدق او لا تصدق، اللي بيصدق ده المؤمن، اللي ما بيصدقش يبقى ايه؟ مش مؤمن. فكون ان انا دماغي تاكلني على مستقبل العيال، دماغي تاكلني على الفلوس اللي محطوطه في البنك، دماغي تاكلني على الاراضي والاطيان والعقارات والمحلات ودماغي تاكلني على البيزنس، وانسى ان الهدف الاساسي من حياتي هنا ان انا ابقى مقدس لربنا، ايه اللي هيحصل؟ لا هاخد دي ولا هاخد دي، هبقى تعيس. عشان كده القديس بولس قال لك ان كان لنا رجاء في المسيح في هذه الحياه فقط فنحن ايه؟ اشقى جميع الناس، معناها تتعب على الفاضي. المثل الكبير بتاعي في اول القصه دي بيساله بيقول له نعمل ايه؟ قال له اديني 200 دينار ومش هيكفيهم. 200 دينار يعني بيفكر في الايه؟ ايه الحل؟ ايه الحل يا فيلبس؟ قال له ايه؟ الفلوس. ايه الحل يا فيلبس؟ قال له الفلوس. يبقى نجح ولا سقط؟ سقط سقوطا عظيما. فلما جه اندرو يتكلم، اندرو بيتكلم بيحاول ينقذه لانه شاف ان الوضع ربنا سكت. بص له كده وقال له فيلبس نعمل ايه؟ قال له 200 دينار مش هيكفوا، فربنا بص له وراح سكت. فالعمليه اصبحت محرجه. مين يطلع يدافع عنه؟ اندرو، لان اندرو صاحبه. في اول الانجيل يقول لك واندرو وجد فيلبس وقال له تعالى وجدنا المسيح، هو اللي جابه، فكان غالبا بيدافع عنه. الكلمتين بتوع اندرو ادوني امل شويه لما قال له ايه؟ عندنا غلام هنا عنده 5 خبزات سمكتين. انا قلت بس ده اندرو اكشولي فهم ان ربنا يقدر يعمل، وراح مكمل طينها. قال ايه؟ ولكن ما هذا لمثل هؤلاء. طب بتتكلم ليه؟ الله، طب لما انت عارف ان ده مش هينفع وما عندكش التوقعات ان ربنا يعمل معجزه بتتكلم ليه؟ غالبا بيتكلم عشان يعمل ايه؟ يخلص صاحبه من الزنقه، لان العينين مركزه عليه. كل الناس كل التلاميذ راحوا باصين لفيلبس اللي بياخد الامتحان، عارف لما يتحط قدام الامتحان والناس كلها بتتفرج هيقول ايه؟ هينجح ولا هيسقط؟ وسقط. هل ده اللي نتوقعه من ربنا يسوع المسيح؟ اخر القصه يقول لك حبوا ياخدوه يعملوه ملك. الله، انتوا رايحين من ناحيه ان احنا ما نتوقعش منك حاجه لناحيه لا ده انت تبقى الملك. قال لان دي طريقه البشر في التفكير والعالم. اذا حد عنده موهبه على طول نفكر نعمله ايه؟ قائد، زعيم سياسي، ونعمل له حزب ونمشي وراه. هي دي توقعاتنا ودي طريقتنا في التفكير، لكن دي طريقه ربنا؟ لا. من اجمل القصص اللي بنعدي عليها وما بنفكرش فيها، كتير انا قاعد افكر في القصه دي. يوسف في مصر، يقال عن يوسف انه كان الرب مع يوسف فكان رجلا ناجحا. يا ترى اتقالت لما كان قائد كبير بيوزع قمح في مصر؟ لا. وما اتقالت امتى؟ قالت لما اتباع عبد. يعني هو نزل لاخر مرحله في الكينونه بتاعت البشر، ان يبقى عبد بيتباع بفلوس. وهو في بيت بوتيفار قالت عليه ايه؟ الكتاب المقدس قال عليه ايه؟ وكان الرب مع يوسف فكان رجلا ناجحا. يعني ايه بقى؟ يعني ايه عبد ناجح؟ يعني هو عبد من المقياس بتاعنا النهارده، هو في اكتر من كده؟ ده احنا بنكره القصه دي جدا. يعني ايه واحد عبد ناجح؟ فهموهاني ده انا بقى دي. هو النجاح ان الانسان يبقى عبد؟ لا. هو النجاح ان الانسان يبقى ايه؟ قديس. قديس. العالم ما غلبوش يبقى نجح. وبعدين رجع اتقالت تاني عليه وهو في السجن، بعد ما بقى عبد في السجن. طب النجاح في ايه ده؟ ايه النجاح بقى من وجهه نظر العالم؟ ايه النجاح ده؟ حد يفسرها لي. ما اتقالتش عليه وهو ملك، اتقالت عليه وهو ايه؟ عبد في السجن. يبقى الطريقه بتاعت العالم عكس طريقه ربنا خالص. اما اجي ربنا يقول لك اهتم بملكوت الله وبره، ده النجاح بتاعنا. ابراهيم يقعد لغايه لما بقى قرب يبقى 100 سنه 90 سنه وبيقول لربنا انت بتقول لي هتديني نسل وانا دلوقتي عندي الفلوس دي كلها راح على الراجل العبد بتاعي. ايه النجاح في كده؟ ده انا حاسس ان انا فاشل، حياتي ملهاش معنى. حياتي ملهاش معنى. طب ايه النجاح؟ مراته قالت له خد الست دي واتجوزها وهات منها عيل. في تجربه بتيجي نمشي بالطريقه بتاعت الناس، نحلها بالطريقه البشريه، لان شكل ربنا مش هيحلها. نحلها بالطريقه البشريه. حتى يوسف في ضعفه قال كده، قال الراجل الساقي ايه؟ اذا رحت لفرعون هتطلع من هنا تروح فرعون يبقى افتكرني. نحلها بالطريقه البشريه، شكل ربنا نسينا او مش هيقدر يعمل لنا حاجه. هو ده التوقعات بتاعتنا من ربنا. العالم بيقول لنا ايه؟ حلوها بسكتكم، هات فلوس، هات مستوى معين، هات بيت معين تبقى نجاح. ده المقياس. ده المقياس. ما عندكش الحاجات دي انت مش ناجح. زمان يقولوا كده، سمعت الكلمه دي من يومين جميله جدا. يقول لك ايه؟ في الايام زمان كان مقياس النجاح بالقداسه. الانسان يتمنى يبقى قديس. مقياس النجاح دلوقتي بالايه؟ بنجاح في العالم، وبقينا احنا عايزين الاثنين، عايزين ده وده، مش عايز اخسر دي ومش عايز اخسر دي. فتيجي بقى الغيره، وفلان عنده اكتر مني، والفلوس اللي في البنك، والبيزنس اللي اكبر مني، والبتاع هو ليه ينجح عني وليه انا ابقى مش ناجح زيه الى اخره، والمستوى المعيشي والشهادات والمدارس الكبيره وكل الكلام اللي انتوا عارفين ده كله. لكن اللي قاله ربنا قال ايه؟ اوعى تفكر ان ده هيعمل اي حاجه. في ملك في سفر الملوك اخبار الايام، احكي لكم بسرعه، اسمه آسى. الملك ده كان راجل كويس، كان بتاع ربنا، بس كان ملك يهوذا، كان اسرائيل انفصل عنهم، وطلع له بعشا اسمه بعشا ملك اسرائيل عايز يحاربه وياخد منه يهوذا ويبقى هو الملك على الاثنين. فآسى قال ايه؟ لا انا مش هقدر اعمل معاه حاجه. فافكر ازاي نحلها سياسيا. راح لملك سوريا كان اسمه بنهدد، قال له ايه رايك؟ هطلع لك الذهب بتاع الهيكل والذهب بتاع القصر، خدهم مش عايزهم، بس تعالى فك العهد اللي بينك وبين بعشا عشان يضعف ويسيبني في حالي. فبنهدد قال له انا مش هعمل كده، بس عشان خاطر انت بعت لي الذهب ده كله انا هطلع الجيش بتاعي واروح ارعب الراجل ده. فراح رعب بعشا ملك اسرائيل. فالراجل اترعشت وساب الحته اللي كان بيحارب فيها ورجع. فآسى حصل له ايه؟ ارتاح. جال حناني اسمه الرائي قال له ايه؟ قال له خلي بالك اوعى تفتكر ان انت نجحت، انت هرب منك جيش بنهدد، الراجل ده هيرجع يحاربه اللي هو عمل معاه الايه؟ قال له انت من هنا ورايح هتفضل في حروب مع الراجل ده لغايه لما تموت، لانك اعتمدت على مين؟ على الراجل ده وما اعتمدتش على ربنا. نسيت ان الاثيوبيين والليبيين كانوا طالعين عليك بجيوش ملهاش عدد وانت غلبتهم. عايز يقول له بعيد يعني انت نسيت الجماعه المصريين الفراعنه كانوا طالعين بكارتات ورا اليهود وما عرفوش يعملوا حاجه غير في البحر. ليه بننسى؟ الراجل ده قال عليه تاني برضو في الجزء اللي بعد كده، قال لك لما جاله مرض في رجليه كانت بتوجعه جامد جدا جدا، وجه في اواخر ايامه ما افتكرش ربنا برضو، وراح جري على مين؟ على الدكاتره. طب هو جري على الدكاتره وحش؟ قال لك لا، كان ممكن يجي على الدكاتره بعد ما يطلب الاول مين؟ يقول له يا رب اجعل في ايديهم البركه، انا مش عايز اروح للدكاتره من غيرك. وهنا يورينا ان التوقعات بتاعه الراجل ده من ربنا ضعيفه جدا، حتى لما شاف معجزات. فاحنا توقعاتنا من ربنا ايه؟ الحاجه الحلوه الانسان يعمل عهد من ربنا، يقول له كده، يقول له يا رب انا هقدس نفسي وانت تاخد بالك مني ومن بيتي، انا هبقى قديس عشان التصق بيك وابقى رايح السماء وانت تاخد بالك من احتياجاتنا. اخر حياته ربنا يسوع المسيح يوم خميس العهد، واحده من الاناجيل بص للتلميذ قال لهم انا كنت معكم كل هذا الزمان، اعوزكم شيء؟ قالوا له لا يا سيد، الرب راعي فلا ايه يعوزني شيء. لإلهنا كل مجد الاب والابن والروح القدس الان.